What's up, everybody? It's Chad. I'm back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. Today I'm here with my friend Tabi. Thank you so much for joining me.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, I'm glad to have you on. I love to have the budtender, side of things whenever I can. Because y'all are boots on the ground in the trenches every day when it comes to this stuff. So thank you so much.
We see it all. We know we don't know it all, but we try.
Yeah, you guys get all the cheese myth first too as well. So.
It is, especially when we're watching like social medias and stuff for sure. It's fun.
Yeah, exactly. You guys are really a full force on the social media part too as well. Really the boots on the ground with that. But I've known actually Tabi since the High Horse days when I was with them. Of course, most of us have moved on since then. But for those who may not know you, could you give me a quick intro?
Yeah, I'm Tabi. My name is short for Tabitha. I am a canna mom. I work at Dark Matter in Sunland Park. I'm also, I would like to say that I'm an advocate, I guess, as far as like cannabis is concerned.
Yeah.
I'm all about compliance. I'm heavy on compliance and stuff like that. So catch me at Dark Matter.
Yeah, that's great. So how long have you worked at Dark Matter now?
Since September.
Okay.
I've been there. Yeah, it's been pretty good. I like it there a lot.
Yeah.
Busy.
Yeah, it is. It makes the day go by quicker.
Honestly, it does. Yeah. Meeting all those people though, it's the best. That's what I like the most about the job.
Yeah, that's great. We need people like that. Not just the person that when you walk in, they just say, "What do you want?"
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it kind of thing.
Look, this is fire. Like, get this. And I don't like that. I like to know what my customers want, why they want what they want. I'll ask like, how do you want to feel? What is it that you're feeling? Why do you want to give it? Because it's it's important. I believe cannabis is medicine.
I believe that too. Every cannabis use is medical or medicinal at some point. And I also believe that, if you're in the industry, you are an advocate. Yes. You signed up secretively, you don't even know it. You just got to embrace it.
Yeah, honestly, and I feel like budtenders should embrace it a little bit more. We should be the ones in the forefront calling, like in Texas, for example, just making sure that our customers are getting stuff, not just because I want to sell it, but because I want to help you out. Yeah. Like I firmly believe that budtender should be like that.
I agree. You guys are doing a really good job over at Dark Matter. So I gotta let you guys know that because like Tracy's over there and all that. A couple other people that we know, and just do a knockout killer job. And just it goes a long way because you're down in pretty much what I call the Texas market down in Little Dubai and Sunland Park.
It is.
It is pretty much the Texas market. So you get to experience best of both worlds, I guess, is the New Mexico and the Texas side. Because people in Albuquerque, they forget Texas even exists. Yeah. Or is even connected to us, or they're just like, oh, you guys in southern New Mexico are pretty much Texans, and I'm like,
basically,
okay.
I'm not.
It's like, well, your mom. So yeah, and it's cool that you get that. So you live in El Paso, but you work in Sunland Park.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm a Texas medical patient as well, so I definitely see both sides of everything and stuff. Like, I know that in Sunland Park, the majority of our customers are Texas patients, and because of that, I encourage them, like, hey, get your medical card, especially with stuff that's happening right now. Like, it's super important, just to cover your butt, pretty much.
Yeah, and that was one reason why a lot of people got their medical cannabis card before New Mexico went, adult use, was just for legal protections. Really, I just want to smoke weed and I want the legal protections. And to be honest, I couldn't blame people. Yeah. And one thing that I really like about us going adult use and keeping our medical program and keeping it as strong as possible is the fact that you have the choice to either stay, or if you really need it, or go, or if you really need it, stay. Yeah. And yes, our numbers dipped over like 50% since then, but that just shows you how many people really didn't need it. Yeah. And slowly we'll get more people back, of course, especially since you don't pay taxes. Like that's a huge thing, and taxes go up next month. July 1st, unfortunately. And every year after that, it goes up 1%, and I think until 2026. 2028 is I think when it stops. So that's unfortunate because it goes almost to 30% taxes overall. And we're kind of at that threshold. And I'm sure you've seen it, being where you are, that, people are like 20%, that's a lot. And if it keeps going up, that black market, is going to kind of take over in that sense. I'm not too sure about Little Dubai and Sunland Park. I think you guys are kind of good where you are right now.
Yeah.
Just for the sole fact of, you know, your how close you are to Texas.
Yes.
You know, and I don't think that'll really affect y'all that much. But the rest of the state will kind of be like, oh, well, you know, yeah, my plug is kind of selling this almost 30% cheaper than you. You know, like,
medical card.
yeah, and it's been a struggle to try to get that change at the legislature and, you know, at the state level, because of course the lawmakers don't want that to change because they love the money that's coming in from that.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, you know, other government entities, but they're not seeing it from a different perspective. You know, of course, they're only seeing it from numbers and regulation, not the actual real thing going on. Because I can see it in a few years. Why are we having issues? I'm like, well, you look at the taxes.
Yeah,
you know, like
exactly.
if you buy a glass of wine or beer, your taxes are significantly lower than it is if you buy a gram of cannabis. You know what I mean?
Isn't that something though?
Yeah.
Like how different they treat like alcohol and cannabis, and they want it to regulate it the same. And
Yeah.
stuff. It's just, it's dumb. Hypocrisy.
Yeah, and you can't, you know, like even when it comes to, you know, production of it, you know, we're finding out you can't treat it like beer. Beer, you're literally putting it through a chemical process, through time and everything, and it's going through some natural organic processes. And you can change the levels as it goes, and you can pull it at a certain time. With cannabis, it's a little bit different, you know, like your levels aren't as consistent and aren't as predictable, especially right now when our genetics aren't where they need to be. And to be honest, we'll get on a conversation about genetics a little bit later in the episode.
Yeah, for sure.
But before we get in the meat and everything, I know we're already kind of talking on this. What did you do before you got into the cannabis industry? I've actually been curious about that because I never asked you.
Yeah, so before I did a lot of retail. I'm super focused on customer service because of that. I worked a lot like at restaurants and stuff. Pretty much floating like a little fish out of water. I just couldn't find myself in anything. My jobs were not consistent. I did everything.
Yeah.
And once I got into the cannabis industry, I just felt more like at home. I feel more like I belong here. What did I do before cannabis? I really don't know. I don't know what I've been doing, but now that I'm here, I have a goal. I have focus. I have like things that I want to do, goals that I want to reach, truly write history, you know, and so you can read about it.
We'll talk about that more and everything, what you got going on. So, you know, how long have you been a cannabis user? You know, what really brought you into being a cannabis user as well?
I've been a cannabis user, I guess, consecutively since I was 18. I tried it when I was really, really young, and, you know, just scared, like dare program scares you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You don't want to try it when you're 18. You're like an adult. You want to do everything. But mostly I got it thinking I just wanted to get high. I liked the way it felt. But then I realized, oh no, it's actually making me feel good. It's helping me with things. I don't feel nauseous in the morning like I always do.
Yeah.
It just, that's the start of my cannabis use. And then I was like a big old stoner.
Yeah.
I ended up selling, you know, Reggie.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. No, I'm just playing. No, but yeah. So I mean, I know pretty much the consumer, the back in the day, the black market.
Yeah.
The just knowing pretty much how things go on both sides. Like I know how to assess my sales for like the customers and stuff. So I love the cannabis industry. I love learning about it. Everything I learn about it every day is pretty amazing. And then working with, you know, like you, for example, knowing Valerie Halbert, Tracy, like it's been the best experience, I think, of my life.
Yeah, you know, and it's been fun. You know, to be honest, this last 3 years have been kind of a blur, you know, because I've been in the medical program and everything since 2013, doing all this thing here in New Mexico. And, you know, like at no time did the time really move as fast as it has this past 3 years for me in this industry.
Yeah.
And to be honest, you know, of course we were stagnant for the longest time, and it makes sense. But, you know, now we're at this really exciting point where, you know, we are on a national scope. You know, people are watching us the way that we're doing this, regardless of what a connoisseur may say or not, some other bro in some other state, you know, who doesn't pay attention. But the ones who are paying attention are the important ones.
Yes.
The ones making the laws, the ones who are advocating, the ones who are pushing for change. You know, not just the bro smoking in his mom's, you know, living room or his own living room like that, and just, you know, smoking the best packs he can get from, you know, dispensaries or whatever, or the coolest packs. Like, you know, the ones who are really out there paying attention are the ones who are watching New Mexico right now.
Yeah.
Because it's been done in a particular way for so long, and that way hasn't really worked. You know, like it worked to a certain point, but then you looked at how it worked and what caused that and what the cause effect of that was, and you're just like, I don't think that was a really good result.
Yeah.
You know, like the way we went about this, you know, it turned into some corporate grab, some nightmare with a bunch of different companies with a few companies trying to take over a whole industry, which is ridiculous. You know, that's not the way it works. And to be honest, it's not the way it's working out either.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these bigger companies are kind of learning that the hard way. You know, they thought they were going to come in, steamroll everybody and just like, we're going to produce the most. And it did drive the prices down, but a lot of the people are kind of shifting away from booth. Yeah. And that's one thing I want to ask you is you're down in Sunland Park, which is, like we said, the Texas market. So how does the Texas and New Mexico market differ?
Well, Texas market, I believe they're more, they're definitely all about like THC percentage. They want what they consider the best, what they've been marketed as to be considered the best and stuff. And I know that when it comes to New Mexico patients, they're more open to listening about the medical part. They're more open to be like, what's a terpene? Oh, cannabinoids? What's that? Yeah. So we're like, oh, this is how it helps. This is what it does. I love humulene and myrcene and this and this. And when they start seeing that, oh, look, like this stoner budtender knows what the heck they're talking about, they are more willing to purchase something like that would help them better. Yeah. Instead of getting like distillate stuff, which is what the Texas market likes to purchase.
That's rough.
It's hard.
Yeah.
We usually like to like, hey, look, this is the reason why cured and live resin are really better than like distillate. You don't want to drink or eat that or smoke it or consume it. You know, like get rosin, get full spectrum stuff. Yeah. And I've noticed that like the more we tell the New Mexico patients, the more they're willing to listen to it. Texas just wants the quick high. Yeah. They want to, you know, I'll pay you $50 for 5 carts and I'm good. You know?
Yeah. You know, this just has to last me a long time kind of situation. Like it's like a difference between survival and, you know, just being in luxury with this. Yeah. You know, because in New Mexico, we're in a luxury, you know, like we live in this. I live in Las Cruces. I'm 30, 40 miles from the Texas border or whatever. Yeah. So I don't really have to worry as much or, you know, it's just there. Yeah. You know, I can grow it in my backyard, you know, you know, like literally. But, you know, the Texas resident, they're coming over as a visitor, you know, they're getting this product. They have to go back where it's illegal. And so I get it, you know, at the same time, but is it slowly changing though for the Texas market? Are they kind of focusing on other things now or is it staying?
So what I've noticed since I started working is like the majority of my sales were flower, all flower, everybody wanted flower. And now a lot more people are more like inclined to get like edibles. Drinks are super popular right now. Cartridges, like it's just more of an expansion of things that they're willing to try. Oh, like that looks good. Oh, you should try it. You know, like, I think that, honestly, like that's something that we definitely like to push. Is just to expand it, taste something different. You don't like the way this tastes? Let me show you. Yeah. One of the biggest questions that I ask whenever I'm like taking care of a customer is, let me know how you like it. Yeah. If you don't like it, let me know. Like that way we can get you something that you will like. I don't want you to leave and then be like, oh, I didn't like that product. I'm never going back there again. No, come back. Let me tell you, there's some other stuff that you can take.
Yeah, you know, because you know, not everything that you like, everyone else will like. Exactly. Or vice versa. Yeah. You know, you kind of have to figure out what the like and taste is for every individual person. You know, and it's like being a bartender, you know, because you had your when I was a bartender, I had my regulars that liked particular things. Like I used to make something called a Chilton. And normally you put a little bit of lemon in there, but my customer who liked the way I made it, she wanted 2 whole lemons in it the first time I made it. Okay. And ever since then, that's the way she wanted it. And that was a particular way. And, you know, I see it the same way. You know, you have it as a particular thing. You just have to figure it out. And it takes time. And it takes the customer being patient too as well with you. Yeah. You know, and you all being so as patient as you are, you know, with them. It's almost like you're holding their hand. It's like, okay, you want this? No. Okay, how about this? Yeah. No. How about this? Okay, there you go.
Yeah, sometimes you have to show a little pretty picture to get them to see like, oh, I like that.
Yeah. Yes, of course. And it's not like the customer's dumb or anything like that. They don't know as much as you all know. They're not as exposed as you. And to be honest, that's what they should be able to lean on is the budtender. And unfortunately, that's not the case everywhere. You know, like not every dispensary has that, you know, and that feel of, you know, I'm being educated as I'm buying something. And, you know, I told people, you know, this is up to us to get away from this high THC thing. And people are like, well, how do we do that when they don't want to listen? I was like, if they don't want to listen, put it where they're going to see it. Yeah. You know, put it where it's subliminal. There's subliminal message all over marketing, you know, all over the world. Yeah. You know, everywhere you look, McDonald's, Apple, Android, whatever it is, there's subliminal messages within that,
Always. I mean, there's just sneak it in there a little bit, put the seed in there and stuff. Education is super important, especially when you're a bud tender, and that's something that I highly encourage all dispensaries, is make sure your bud tenders know what they're talking about. I, as a consumer, I don't want to go to a dispensary and be like, give me a really good rosin pin, and they're trying to sell me on distillate or resin or something, and it's like, do you know what rosin is? You know why I like the rosin? Oh no, this is fire. Like, no, don't do that. That's my biggest pet peeve, is a bud tender that doesn't know, but that's because the management or their higher ups are not doing their part to teach them.
Exactly.
And that's super important. And that's something that we push at Dark Matter, especially Tracy, especially Adrian Cowboy, we push education. We tell our customers, like, look, this is the reason why this is this. You want to compare it to alcohol? Would you prefer drinking a well drink, or would you prefer drinking like a top shelf stuff? Like, this is why you want to drink that. And that's something that we definitely need to instill a little bit more. I have heard customers tell me they went to this dispensary and they don't know nothing. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know what to do about that.
I don't know. But I mean, like, that's something that I've had a lot of like thought, as far as like, how do I get them to know? How do I get other bud tenders to get themselves educated and stuff? I'm kind of writing a book on that, just to like a little guide. Like I said, I'm full of compliance. It's gonna mostly focus on like laws and knowing about what you can sell, what you can't sell, how you should do this. I'm gonna have like tidbits of just little history, but mostly focus on the New Mexico market, not like a universal type of thing.
I mean, there's so many different laws everywhere you go, like and we're so unique in New Mexico that someone's going to read it from Michigan or California and be like, what the hell are they talking about?
Like, why are they adding this? And
like the other day I got into some, little tidbit things with some guys from other states that don't realize that not everywhere has 60 to 80% humidity constantly. Like they don't realize that, 1% to 20, 30% exists. And, where we're sitting right now is probably like 12% humidity. So, you run into issues like dry cannabis. And some people think that it's not an issue. I'm like, dude, that is totally an issue. It's like, you don't know what you're doing. It's like, I don't think you know what we're talking about. And I don't think you know science.
And that's something too that I also tell them, because there are complaints about like how dry the cannabis is around here. And I'm like, well, look at the area. You're in the desert. We're not going to have the same kind of flower that Colorado has, but we have really quality flower compared to a lot of stuff in Colorado. I let them know, like, you're in a desert, you're not gonna get moist weed, and if you do, they probably didn't cure it right.
Or like, it's still curing.
Like it goes back to the education part. If like a customer is all, oh, it's too dry, and you stay stuck, like, I don't know what to tell you. Figure it out. Figure out where the farm is, why the temperatures are like this, and what's going on. Like, everybody is different. Every state is different. So every state is going to have a different kind of flower.
And that's something that, great for the book. So let's talk about the book. How long do you think until it's released, or you have your drop of the book?
I'm hoping by my birthday in October, because I just want to tweak out some stuff that like I'm having ChatGPT help me, but it's most of the stuff that I've collected throughout the 3 years that I've been in the cannabis industry, stuff that I've learned from you guys, stuff that I've learned on my own. And like I said, it's going to be catered to the New Mexico bud tender, because our laws are different, because we're all different in like the way we see things and stuff. And I just want them to be educated. I just want them to know, like, there's something out there that I can read and stuff, instead of just going around, this is fire.
No, and that's great that you're giving that perspective, because like, it's really sad to see that either a place will put a really pretty girl in front of your face, or they'll just put a yes man that's trying to just sell you something. And that's unfortunate that and that happens retail all over the place. Like, all locals exist for a reason. And it works until it doesn't. What I mean? And we're starting to see in the cannabis industry that some things just don't work.
Some things don't work. A lot of what I've seen in the cannabis industry is that our customers don't want certain themes to be played out in like dispensaries. They don't want to go to a dispensary and you know, see ojos locos type of stuff.
Yeah.
They want to go and learn about the product that they're getting. I've noticed that a lot of older customers come into our store because they're avoiding that young stuff, the themes and all that stuff.
They just want to get their medicine.
Yeah, they do. They don't want to see that pretty girl.
Like,
Hey, mind you guys are pretty, but like, there's a little bit more to that when it comes to cannabis.
Yeah, you know, and there's nothing worse than, you know, when they throw the pretty girl at you and she just doesn't know anything. I was like, oh man, you would be great if you just knew something. Yeah. You know, like if you just anything.
Like, tell me, I mean, even if like as a budtender, even if you just want to focus on one thing, that's perfectly fine. Like at Dark Matter, we have, I'll take care of any customer, every customer. But if they're like, oh, I want to learn more about rosin, and I'm like, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know that much, but I know somebody else that does. Yeah. Hey, look, Cowboy, he'll talk to you about rosin all day.
And that's the best way to do it. You know, you gotta really rely on, you know, and that's one thing that I learned when I worked at Apple. In my time there is we relied on each other. You know, the sell wasn't so important that you had to sit there and lie to the customer. Yeah. If you didn't know something, the best way that to go about it, and even this in the Army, we did this in the Army too, is I don't know. Either I can look that up or let's learn together. Yeah. So, you know, we had access to tablets and computers in the store. We could just look it up right then and there and learn together. What says this and this and this? If that's the case, we can try to go this route, you know, and that's the best way that you can go. Or, you know what? I don't know what my knowledge in this area isn't that great, but my friend over here, he is a whiz and he can tell you. So I'll step off real quick. Whenever you guys want, I'll come back and we'll take over. But I want him to explain this as best as possible. And what? I'll stand by so I can learn too. Yeah. So that way, when the next customer comes and asks a similar same question, you already know it. You know, so like you guys learn off of each other, off the backs of each other. And that's the beauty of it. Yeah. And you know, I love seeing that. When I go to the store, you know, I see you guys doing that. I'll watch you guys, you know, while you're working, you know, not creepy, don't worry, you know, it's not like through the curtains, you know. I walk in and I'm sitting there saying hey to people, and you know, I get to watch you guys do your thing, and it's great to see that you take your time. You know, it's not what do you want, you know, get the fuck out. Now some people, don't get me wrong, that's what they want. They just want their weed and get the fuck out. You know, they don't want that's cool. And those are the people that, and I was thinking this when we're talking, remember the Snapple, the little facts under the lid? That's when you slip something like that in there, a little fact thing under, you know, a popsicle stick with the fact thing on it, you know, something like that. You know, maybe a pre-roll on the tube, you could put little facts and little things on there too. You know, that's the way that you reach those customers that want to get the weed and want to get out. You know, like you put it there for them and make it fun. Yeah. You know, like on this day, whatever, this cannabis, whatever, blah, 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 bam. You know,
that'd be great. I take hints.
Hey, there you go. Some ideas. Hope to see that soon. You know, it's a great way to educate people. You know, and Snapple did it. You know, we all had it. Remember those popsicles as a kid? After you ate it, it had the jokes. Little, it had the jokes on it. Yeah, you know, like even something like that. You know, like just something fun. You know, for these people to do. You know, and I hope to see that. You know,
me too. Yeah. That would be great to see something like just, hey, look, a little Easter egg. This cannabis was discovered in this, or you know, like something.
Yeah, it has been discovered that, you know, cannabis was found in this region, you know, originally, you know, or something like that. You know, keep them up to date on things. A new cannabis compound was found such and such date, which is, you know, probably the year that you made it, because they did find a new cannabinoid, you know, pretty recently. So you know, put that on there. You know, like. Teach the people.
Teach them. Put education as a part of something important in marketing at all costs. Like with everything. Why is this edible so good? Well, let me tell you why. This is a distillate edible. This is a full spectrum. This is why it's full spectrum. Little tidbits. That'd be great. That'd be great to see.
Or like the common questions that you'll get, and some of these people that don't want to talk about it, they'll get the answer. You know, what's resin, what's rosin? You know, like you can totally put that on a doob tube, you know, or like, you know, some kind of packaging under a lid or whatever. You know, that's totally possible. And then when they're bored or they're reading it, oh, okay. You just educated them. You didn't have to do anything.
Exactly. And then they're going to come to the store and be like, I want what you described here. Like, what's rosin? I want that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's get you some. You
know? And then you'll have the tube. It's like, oh, yeah, it had this and this. Oh, you mean this? It's like, yeah, that's what I was talking about. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about it more.
Yeah.
And it's a chance to sell that product again and also expand what they're doing. Because maybe they just did, you know, solvents, you know, kind of extracts and hash, and they don't know anything about, you know, hash rosin, don't even know it's a thing. Yeah. Now you just open their world and change it up to them, because it seems like people are moving away from the solvents and going to solventless.
Yes.
And I think it's due to many factors, not just one. One of them being that we are moving away from this high THC thing, this high whatever, and we're focusing on other things.
Yeah.
And we're not so worried about like, I just want the diamonds that are 100% THC when like you actually probably need CBG, maybe a little bit of CBN in your life, you need something else in there with it, not just one isolated compound, like it's not what we really want for this. And that's kind of what the market's screaming now, and it's slowly changing.
Thank God. As far as like becoming a budtender, is one of the biggest pet peeves is being asked what's the highest THC percentage, and you're like, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like how you're feeling. You're not gonna go to taking ibuprofen 800 and then be like, oh, I want the Tylenol 200. It's not the same. Like I want THC percentage as a marketing gimmick. I have people coming into the store all the time asking for something higher than 35%, and I'll pull up a little article that like I read. Look, dude, natural flower doesn't go above 30 like that unless it's manipulated. And it's like, so do you want chemically added stuff, or do you want natural flower that's gonna actually make you feel good? Let me tell you something. This 19%er is gonna knock you on your butt. And they'll come back later and be like, dude, I told you.
Exactly. And sometimes it saves you money because some people price off of the THC percentage. So like you're getting a better deal. Honestly, you're getting a better product at a cheaper price.
Yeah, exactly. Like people think that, it's $43 for an eighth because it's 35% THC. And you're like, no, don't get that one.
No, you're not gonna have a good time.
Like it's gonna give you a headache.
It's straight marketing, homie.
Straight marketing.
And to be honest, and it is our fault because we're the ones who pushed this for the longest time, but we didn't know any better ourselves. And it wasn't until like the last 5 years did we really start to kind of get more education on it and start to change. So we're at fault, but at the same time, we'll take that on the chin, and now it's up to us to change it.
Exactly.
To us to educate. It's like, all right, cool. New science came out, new information came out. We got to update y'all. We were wrong, and so now we got to fix that wrong.
Exactly.
And it's going to take time, but it seems like we are making waves, and we are kind of doing a headway through this. So I'm glad to hear, because a lot of places are trying to crack down on THC percentages, trying to limit this and that. And I think if we do it ourselves naturally, they're just going to forget about it and ignore it because it's not even going to be an issue. And it's not going to be a thing.
Exactly. And then you'll see that all those 35%ers are going to go back down to what they really are, like 20, 18,
And we might even find, a 14, 15%er that is just phenomenal because of what else is in it, everything else, the other cannabinoids, ones that we discovered, ones that we have yet to discover, some that we can't even test for. But we'll talk more about the genetics thing actually here in a little bit. I want to, dive more in a little bit about what, you think and everything. So since you're a Texas resident and you're a medical patient, what do you think of the SB3? And for those of you who don't know, SB3 is the Texas hemp ban stuff that's going on, and she's obviously from Texas. So.
I strongly oppose this SB3 simply because it's kind of hypocritical to ban all hemp and then expand the qualifications for medical cannabis in Texas. It's like, why are you gonna take away something and then be like, oh, but wait, you can totally like get into the program if you have this and this and this qualifications. Like, how can I get the weed then? Like, you're gonna make more people go back to the black market, and that's dangerous because before everything was tested, before like you were able to know exactly how you were growing the plant, what was being added to it, why did this weed taste like that? It's one of those things that if you really don't want to go back to the black market, you don't want those people to lose all that, like, because people are going to lose their jobs, people are going to lose their businesses, it's going to have a big dent in the economy in Texas. And I wish they could see this before it does get banned, because it's just going to be a big mess. I feel like it's going to be a big mess. You're going to get more people from deeper into Texas traveling to places that are legal, and then you're risking them going back to their home and getting pulled over and getting arrested. Nobody should be arrested for cannabis. Nobody, I strongly oppose. I've been calling the governor every single day.
High five, dude. Hell yeah. That's the way you do it.
Yeah. And I've been inviting him, like, look, come over to Sunland Park. Let me talk to you about about cannabis. let's learn. Let's open up the table to learn about it.
Yeah.
Why do your constituents want this plant so bad?
Yeah.
You know, and it's not like alcohol.
Yeah, and you know, majority of constituents in Texas don't want it banned.
No,
you know, like this is something that the legislature is forcing on people,
Mhm.
even though the people they're representing are like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
like they're pissed.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and rightfully so. Don't get me wrong.
They're totally pissed.
Yeah.
And I sincerely encourage everybody that's in Texas to just call your governor, call your people, your representatives, your senators. Like, put your word in there. Be a cannabis advocate too. You smoke weed, fight for that plant. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
don't just sit back and let all this happen.
Yeah, you know, that's the worst you could do, is sitting back and doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people this all the time. You know, it's really, constituent can turn into constituents very quickly. It only takes two people for that to change,
Mm-hmm.
because that becomes plural. And now that legislator can say, my constituents
Mm-hmm.
believe this because two people told them that.
Yeah.
And, you know, even down to like a local election. Local elections are won in dozens of votes. You know, like that's literally how sometimes they're decided.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you sit there and you think that I can't do anything, I'm not going to make a change, a difference. I used to think that.
Yeah.
And now, you know, we're sitting here at the legal cannabis industry, drive-throughs are saved, people are getting
Yes.
educated, you know, all because we didn't quit.
That's,
you know.
That's the biggest drive for me, is seeing like fellow advocates and stuff like that pushing that, making
Yeah.
the laws happen and making things change for the better of the patients.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be. That's how it always should be.
That's what Cisa Puebla's about.
Come on. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's just, I don't know. I just feel like for us to be safer in Texas, they should veto.
I think so too. You know, and I've been a huge, I've been against that bill since it was introduced, of course. You know, when I was down in Austin in
Mhm.
March, you know, I was, you know, educated a lot more on Texas and, you know, the way that market works and is. And, you know, the people there are finding relief. You know, the veterans, oh my God, the veterans showed up and showed out. You know, and I knew they're going to give them hell. There's one demographic you don't want to piss off, and that's us veterans.
And that's the demographic you should be taking care of the most right now.
Yeah.
That's like when we go back to our customers, our patients, a lot of my patients are vets.
Mhm.
A lot of them are going there because they're in pain. They
Mhm.
want to know what else they can take. I want a sativa. Like, I want a sativa that's not going to make me feel painful. Oh, look here, take some chopped cherry. You know, like, that demographic, I feel we should take care of the most. You guys have done a lot for us, you know, like, why aren't we taking care of you?
Yeah, appreciate that.
Getting free weed, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I just hope it changes. I hope things change. I hope the vets do keep going down his throat and calling and showing up and stuff. That's the biggest drive for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I hate SB3.
Yeah. I mean, you got Lieutenant Dan Patrick over there, you know, like, Lieutenant Dan. He's over there just, you know, like just touting just the worst lies. And, you know, he's lobbying for the alcohol industry. And that's terrible because, I mean, a lot of us watching and know, you know, and have experienced, you know, how the horrors that can do to someone's life and family and community, really, you know, like in New Mexico, we've felt that for years. You know, we've been one of the most drunk states in the nation for a very long time. And that's slowly changing with the introduction of cannabis, thank God.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, no, it is. And I'm glad because, you know, that it was just ravaging the state, you know, and of course our generation, the millennials, we did drink a lot. That's slowly changing. We partied a lot, so I'm sure that didn't help. But, you know, once cannabis became more mainstream and available, I think that's what really changed it. You know, it's like, I don't have to get tanked and feel like crap for the next few days to have a good time or to relieve or to find relief. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm gonna go home and have a drink because I had a stressful day, you know, and they try to use it medicinally, and it's just not what it's used for.
Like,
you know,
no, alcohol is a depressant, so you're drinking it. Yeah, you might feel good like whenever you're drinking it, but the next day you're depressed. The next day you're hangover. It's not a good thing all around. That whole alcohol thing. Like, my dad was an alcoholic. I saw the dangers and the damages that it did to him. He passed away because he was drinking, and it's something that I'm completely against because it's like, I don't want to see another family member go through that. I don't want to see anybody go through the stuff that I saw. I didn't even get to have a real dad because of alcohol and stuff like that. So it's like, when they talk about how cannabis, it's killing people. No, man, it literally killed my dad. You know, like, it's not cannabis is helping. If my dad had more access to cannabis, he would probably still be here today because he used it for pain. He used it medicinally.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it's just when they talk about how, oh, alcohol is better than cannabis is killing people, and it's just like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not.
And I mean, yeah, El Paso right now has a drinking issue. You know, the DWIs there are astronomical. And I was writing an article, and I'm probably going to post it at some point about, you know, Texas is trying to ban hemp, but they're ignoring the screaming alcohol issue that's there. And it's so bad in El Paso that the police chief said, we can't arrest our way out of this problem. It's going to have to go back to the community. That's how bad it is.
That's sad.
Yeah. Like, and it's sad that the fact that they're saying, we give up almost, you know, like we can't help you guys. You got to help us. This goes back to you guys needing to hold each other accountable now. You know, take your friend's keys. You know, if he has a problem, get him some help. Yeah. You know, if, you know, you're someone who's literally having a bottle while you're driving, that's a problem, homie. Dude, like, yeah, that's a problem. And Gino's looking at me like, what? I'm just kidding.
Like, why are you letting your friend drive like that?
You know, and like, yeah, if you've done it before, you know, I hope you've never done it again.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's something that, you know, is something to look for. I've had friends that have dealt with alcoholism, and it's no joke. You know, like it's something that, you know, is scary. And luckily one of them got out of it. And still deals with some issues, but, you know, for the most part, you know, she's a lot better than what she was.
That's good.
You know, from having cans of Strawberritas in her freaking pillowcase to now maybe only having a drink once every few months. You know, and that's progress in my book.
That's definitely progress. Any kind of progress is good. Like, I'm proud of your friend for having just that 1 or 2 drink a month or something. You know, like that's definitely good, especially when they're steering away from something like that. Cannabis helps. You know, I don't know, man. Just alcohol is just such an ugly monster because of what it does to not just you, but the ones around you. And then for it to be glorified the way it is, and cannabis to like be demonized, stigmatized, that's not. I just hope it changes, and we gotta kill that stigma.
We do. And you know, like some of the studies that have come out have been alarming for some people, but when you look at the studies, you know, you look at who's funded it and the way it was done, you're just like, oh, well, this is bullshit. Because if that were the case, we would see a lot more heart issues nationwide now than we have in the past. You know, like, and I just don't think that's the case. But you know, moving on to the last 2 things I wanted to talk about. So your content on your social media, I find it hilarious, and sometimes I share it because it's true. And, you know, I really love the fact that, you know, you give everybody like a real idea of what people actually ask you sometimes, because not everybody's just asking you for the best weed. Sometimes they're asking, do I get reimbursed for ATM fees? You know, or, you know, can you guys spot me $5 so I can buy this gram, or, you know, things like that. Just odd stuff, right?
So I'm always posting some stuff like, no, we can't front you your gram until Friday. Like, we don't do credit like that. No, we don't give you back the $350 from the ATM fee. Does Walmart do that? You know? Why are you asking me for this? Yeah, it's just silly things that definitely pop up in the retail part of things that I'll bring up because it's silly, but also because it's like, guys, come on, you know, you're adults, you should know better. I love just being silly all the time because I know that somebody's watching, somebody's listening, and then maybe somebody's learning from the stuff that I post. I'm a stickler. I seem like I'm harsh and whatnot with the way I talk, but it literally comes from a good place. Like, I'm being a silly girl, but I'm also trying to teach you because goddamn.
And that's the way I prefer it. You know, like, you know, I came from learning from the Army, and that's just, you know, calling you a dumbass and expecting you to learn it. You know, like, it's not the way that really works that well. So I'm glad that you do it lighthearted. You know, and make it fun and funny, because sometimes people are just ignorant, like, or blissfully ignorant. You know, and sometimes they don't realize how silly it was what they said. And I do it sometimes myself. I'm like, well, that sounded really stupid now that I said it out loud. You know?
I'll just, like, sometimes when it's a little too outrageous, I'll stare at them like, did you really just say that? Like, did you really just ask me? And it's one of those things that, like, it's super lighthearted. Super, I'm not being mean or nothing, unless you'll know. But I like teaching people like that because it catches their attention. It's something that they'll remember. Like, I remember Tabi said this. We can't get the $350 back. Okay, I got you.
Okay, like, cool. I'm not even gonna ask that.
If you see Tabi, don't ask her about high tea percentage. Like,
most people know that about me too. I'm just like,
I'll make a face. Which one's the highest? This one.
Like, Is it the best? Well, it's the highest.
You want it the highest,
yeah.
not the best.
Yeah, it's like, which one's the best? That one? But it's only 20%. Yeah. Okay. Do you want the best or do you want the high? Like, which one do you want?
Do you want added stuff to make it that, or do you want pure stuff to make it the lesser? And you're gonna get a pure hit, you know? Like,
yeah. Because something that someone mentioned to me, and I didn't even think of this, was they're like, I haven't had cottonmouth in who knows how long because of, you know, everything that's coming out. And, you know, I guess we could talk about that more here in a little bit. And I was like, I haven't either. And certain older or better grown cultivars, I'll smoke it and I'm like, oh, I got cottonmouth. And I'll get kind of excited. I'm like, shit. I was like, oh, wow, thank you. You fucked me up.
And you're all chinky-eyed and everything.
Yeah, like, that's great. Oh, that was good. I'm medicated as hell. So yeah, you know, that's something that maybe we'll see. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But I wanted to ask you this before we move on. October 20th is International Budtender Day. I don't know if you knew that. I'm sure you did. I have no clue. But what do you think we should do for the budtenders to thank y'all? Because, you know, that's your all's day. And, you know, we have Veterans Day, of course, but the budtenders help veterans, you know, internationally, really. So what would be something that'd be great to help y'all, you know, on that day?
On that day, I don't know, like your budtenders like stuff. They like freebies. They like food. They like munchies. We love it when our customers come in and they bring us donuts. They bring us snacks. We have a regular that likes to tip everybody.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it's super sweet. Just say thank you. I would say that maybe just buy them a pre-roll. You know, they use their tips for weed anyway.
Yeah,
So it's like, get them something cute. Just show them that you appreciate them, pretty much. If you're an owner of a dispensary, tell them thank you. Do something special for your budtenders because, like, yeah, they are the front. They are the face. They are the reason why people keep going back to your dispensary. Why you have that flow of customers and stuff. It's the budtender. The budtender is the face of your company. Take care of them.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think just having a discount for the customers that day isn't enough. And to be honest, it's almost a slap in the face. You know, you need something that really thanks the budtender because, you know, doing a lot of work. Yeah. You know, like, and some people don't see it, whatever, but, you know, the ones that appreciate it, yeah, those are some really great ideas. You know, I think, you know, coming in with burgers or something or food for everybody, you know, of course, you know, not everybody, you know, some people have, you know, food allergies or whatever, you know, the restrictions, but, you know, just keep that in mind. But, you know, something like that, or maybe if you have a lounge, like a cannabis lounge, maybe make it budtender day throughout the whole day. You have free food for the budtenders that come in industry or whatever. And then later in the night, maybe industry night for, you know, budtenders and kind of just hang out and whatever. Because, you know, the budtenders work, you know, sometimes they work for a 24-hour dispensary. Sometimes they work late and they're all different, you know, so throughout the day, I think would be something great.
I think that's a really good idea, especially because, like you said, we have different shifts. There are some that do the overnight thing, and I'm positive they feel the least seen because it's overnight, you know, and it's just everybody that day. Just give them a thank you, a little, hey, thanks, man. Here's a pre-roll.
You know, exactly. Yeah. So, well, I appreciate that. And, you know, we'll move on to the next topic. But before we do, where can people find you online and to see your presence and everything and to see these funny little quotes and tidbit things that you put down?
I'm on Facebook, Tabi, Amaya, all together, the same handle for Instagram. You can also find me at Dark Matter. I usually work mornings. Hopefully in July it's going to change a little bit, but that's where you guys can find me. Add me, question everything, like just ask me stuff. I like to answer. I love engaging with people and stuff like that. And like the people that laugh at my jokes, I'll joke with them a little afterwards and stuff. It's super cool. It's cute.
It is. Yeah, and I always like, you know, the messing with you too. And I'm like, oh, dude, that's great. Or something like that. Yeah, and it's funny.
The engagement is awesome. I love it.
It is, 100%. So, but anyway, we're going to move on to our next topic. We're going to be talking about cannabis genetics. And we kind of been easing into this conversation throughout the whole time, but I really want to dive into this because this comes from a report. And what it is there's some bottlenecking coming from our genetics. And it's not just one reason or one thing. It's several different things causing this. And what I mean by bottlenecking is we've ended up with these cultivars that are 30%, you know, and like there's like no CBD. You know, CBGs, what is that? You know, who she? You know, like THCV, who that? You know, and, you know, terpenes, those left months ago, you know, like kind of thing. So like, you know, we're ending up with a inferior product, in my opinion, an inferior genetics, and we're passing those on. You know, you have the gelatos, you have the Skittles and stuff, and I kind of feel those. I wouldn't say it was the start of it, but that's really where it's really got to get worse. You know, with the genetics, because you have all these. Don't get me wrong, we have great terps, but then you have 30% THC, but you know the terps are this and this, and it tastes like Skittles, and it's just not where we want to be, because there's so much more to this plant than just the THC thing. And this report, they talked to a bunch of different growers throughout the whole nation and things like that, and try to figure out where it's gone. And to be honest, they're not a victim, but they're at mercy of the customer. Right. You know, what the customer wants. They're only going to grow what the customer wants. Now, every now and then they kind of guess, and the customer may like it, you know, whatever, you know, that's a win. But you know, they're really at they're like a victim of the customer almost. It's like and like they tell these people, that the people that are doing the study, like, we don't want these kind of ones, but this is what's going out there. And this is what's kind of getting thrown out into the market. And to me, it's alarming, because there's so much more, and we're better than this.
Yeah,
you know?
For sure.
And,
I think, like, as far as when, like you said, like, this is what the customer wants. Well, it's what we are telling the customer what they want. Mostly it's us telling them how they want it. We should tell them how they should want it.
Yeah.
Like THC isn't important, but that's like where you said it's going to go into it, where the customers are starting to learn that, they are starting to see that, and hopefully it changes the way that bottlenecking goes and whatnot, because we need to teach everybody, and the way to kill the stigma is to kill that THC percentage thought, and because it's not important.
And that's how we're going to, you know, redirect our path on the genetics and kind of get back to more holistic. Because, you know, people talk, oh yeah, the shit back in the day, you know, wasn't even that potent. It used to kick my ass. I'm like, probably because it just had way more in it that was, you know, working together with everything to do that. You know, it's not just about the THC, like we say all the time. Exactly. And like, to be honest, you know, THC is one of the first compounds that they discovered, you know, and, you know, barely knew anything about. We're still learning about it. You know, and more came a long time. You know, CBD, I think we didn't discover that much long ago, you know, like it wasn't very long ago. And so now we have like CBG now, CBN, THCV, like I said earlier, you know, THCA, of course, is, you know, non-decarboxylated non-decarboxylated THC. And so now we have all these other things that we can look at. And when it comes to our testing too, and that's another thing, is what are we missing in the tests? You know, like what compounds is it not seeing? Because we just don't either know it's there, or we don't give a shit about it, because of the fact of what the market has dictated. And now that's slowly changing. So now it's kind of like, oh, thank God, I can get back to who I am. You know, like, I'm back to my naturalness. This is great. You know, because the cannabis today isn't the same from the 70s. You know, you look at the 70s high time, it's these wispy, weird looking things. And you look at them today, they're beautiful, dense nugs, super frosty, you know, super smelly. And, you know, it's not the same. But things are changing. You know, I feel not going backwards. I just feel a full circle, you know, like a full circle of what's going on. Like we experienced all this craziness and technology, but we're realizing that we didn't need it this whole time, you know, like certain places, of course, but we didn't need all this intervention, because, you know, we've been, and cannabis isn't the only crop that goes through this. This happens in most other crops. And that's what the report, you know, stated too, is, you know, this happens in a lot of other crops too. If you take a look at corn, you know, there's many different varieties of corn, you know, out there, not just the white corn or the yellow corn. You got blue corn, you got multicolored corn, you know, like if you go to Mexico, you can find all kinds of corn. And it's cool, right? You know, it's great. And, you know, whenever someone sells elote and they tell me they got it from Juarez, the corn, I'm like, oh, I know this is going to be fire. You know, like, I know this is going to be fire. And it is, and it's good. Yeah, it's way better. You know, it's because of what they grew, you know, what they grew, this particular one. So this isn't just a cannabis issue, but this is something that we can redirect and kind of fix it once we notice it. And it's also our regulations are the reason why this happens too. You know, like they're worried about THC percentages. You know, there's other things in it that they could worry about, but they're just worried on that. They're not even worried about CBD percentages. You know, it's there, but they're worried about CBD, you know, the THC, and they want to standardize it. And, you know, I know that's a human thing. We want to standardize things. You know, the military, we called it dress right dress. And I know that's just our nature. But when it comes to something like this is actual real nature, and we have to allow nature to do its thing. You know, because if we manipulate it and mess with it too much, we end up where we're at now. And it's like, okay, our genetics aren't the best. And even the way that we're getting feminized genetics worries me, because I'm running into more hermaphroditic genetics than I have ever in the past. And I don't know if it's the methods that we're using or the genetics that we're just passing down through our selectiveness or whatever.
Yeah.
And because our end goal was high THC, not all around great product, you know, and I think that's going to slowly change, and it's unfortunate. But, you know, another issue I saw from this was also outdoor being affected by these plants that are genetically, I guess you could call them inferior,
Right.
you know, tainting the landrace strains, I guess is what I could say. And that's something that is an issue as is, because there's barely any land races left, you know, in the whole world. So it's like, oh, that kind of sucks, you know, like we have a chance to kind of start fresh with these land races, you know, and kind of figure out our path there. But we may have to go the long way and kind of figure out another way and rely on some science for that to get there. So, I mean, what is your kind of thoughts on that? Because, I mean, it's been 1,000 years that we've been messing with this plant.
I know. I guess like you said, like after messing with it so much, realizing that technology really doesn't apply to certain things or certain aspects when growing, I feel like maybe we should redirect it, figure it out the natural way. Then science isn't working, let's do it the way we used to do it back in the day.
Like what the plant wants, you know, like read the plant.
Talk to the plant. Yeah, like, because some plants, like, they're more receptible to being in a really ugly environment. Other plants, you know, just different ways that different, like humans, you know, you're not going to treat this person the way you treat somebody that has high anxiety, you know, like you're not going to nurture somebody's trauma with something from somebody else. Like, you gotta focus on the one thing. You gotta focus on the one person, the plant. Focus on the actual plant. Let it grow naturally. Let's see what happens. Then if you need to manipulate it, then do it, but naturally. Check it out first.
Exactly. And the best comparison there to make certain people understand is, say we're able to manipulate human DNA, and you can make, you know, just everyone gorgeous, just beautiful people, but that's all you focus on. You know, and then all of a sudden, oh man, everybody's getting cancer. It's like, wow, none of these people can reproduce. What's going on? It's like, did we look at, you know, maybe what's in the gene code to maybe fix that issue, you know, along with it too, not just an attractive person. And that's kind of what we did with cannabis. We just made it an attractive cannabis, and we didn't really look at, you know, under that, you know, like and don't get me wrong, all we've done is just selective breeding throughout these years and kind of got it that way. It wasn't like we, you know, splice all the DNA in a certain way and use CRISPR, you know, yet anyway. Anyway. But yeah, in the post-prohibition era, and that's what they're calling this, we've tended to mess up the cannabis plant. And I kind of suspected that this is what was going on. And this kind of confirmed my suspicions, you know, this report. And it's unfortunate that that's happening. But with people noticing it, we're also noticing a counterculture of craft cannabis. And I've been preaching craft cannabis for years, you know that. And I still to this day, and I do believe that is our backbone here in New Mexico, is craft cannabis. And this report is telling me that too. It's like, yeah, you know, these growers, they want to grow a beautiful craft good product, not this mass produced whatever. And the report also pretty much, you know, confirms that, yeah, you know, growing a mass produced cannabis plant just really isn't working. You know, and that's where we're getting like just these little traits, you know, here and there, like 5 traits that we're going for, you know, high THC, grows fast, and harvest quicks and dries, whatever, you know, all that. And when there's way more to it, you know, when we can slow down. And, you know, we've seen that with like the big corporation companies going out of business, you know, and losing a lot of money, you know. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Me too. I want to see how we go back to basics pretty much because of it.
Yeah, me too. So we'll see, and that's an exciting report to see. And now that I'm hearing that more people are moving towards the terpenes and the other stuff in cannabis versus just the THC, I could see this being more of a thing. And people, of course, there's always the doubters like, oh, we'll never be able to do this. Oh, it's never going to happen. I was like, well, it's happening. So, you know, something worked.
You could stay right there in your negative little mind. But, you know, like we're moving forward.
Yeah. Real change happens when you actually try.
Honestly, you know. Yeah, you have to try. That's the part.
Right. At least try. So that's all I have on that topic and everything. Do you have anything else before we move on?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, cool. So
learning with you.
Right. Yeah. We're all learning together. So the last thing I want to talk about, and this is actually going to be a quick conversation. It's about Canada and their sales. So their sales are changing. The reason why I mentioned Canada is that they're our neighbor. They have the most in common with us compared to like a European country.
Yeah.
So when something changes there, we'll most likely see a similar change here in America.
Okay.
Over there, flower is still king. United States, flower is still king.
Yeah.
Especially pre-rolls. You know, pre-rolls number one.
Yeah.
In both places. Drinks are slowly starting to catch up though, and you know, a few years I could see that taking over, but that's another conversation. Now, Canada has national legal cannabis. If some of y'all didn't know, they legalized it many years ago. So they actually export the cannabis to other countries, UK, Australia, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Now they're seeing a dip in those international sales. Now they're saying that this dip in sales is temporary, and the reason is that Canada's medical cannabis program is starting to tick back up and take back off. So it's offsetting those numbers because it's catching up to those international sales. So it looks like a dip, but it's really not that bad because the other sales are starting to get up, which is telling me that eventually in a cannabis market, the medical program comes back.
Yes.
You know, after a hiatus and people figuring it out and stabilizing. It may take a decade, it may take 2 decades, but eventually it does come back and the people do come back to it. Especially when science comes out and people get older and, you know, they don't want to use, you know, harmful whatever, and they want to use something more natural. You know? So, and times are changing as well. So what this tells me is that once it comes to our program and our states and stuff like that, and federal legalization, whatever, we can't ignore our medical programs. Right. Because eventually we're going to have to lean on that. And not leaning on it for as a financial purpose, but for a health purpose, you know, because people will need it. Cancer patients, epilepsy, you know, just getting old, you know, and getting the old is real. I'm feeling it myself.
You're getting old.
Getting close to 40. I was like, man, 40, getting close to 40 is no joke.
Hey, 40's not bad.
For me anyway, I'm like, man, the Army sped this up a lot. So Aurora Cannabis is the one that's reporting this, that they're seeing it. Their stocks even saw it too, you know, a little bit of a dip. Okay. But I think it's happened before for them when a certain change happens. Like, this is a temporary change. We'll see it, you know, go back up eventually. And I see that too. And this is something that we need to look out as a nation and as a state too, that, you know, when we do go either federally legal or we continue on the path that we are here in New Mexico, we can't forget about the medical cannabis program. You know, and here in New Mexico, like I stated earlier, you know, our program pretty much got cut right in half after, you know, adult use happened. But we didn't give up on it. We didn't end it. It's still there. It's still thriving. And the numbers are slowly starting to tick back up because people are getting tired of paying taxes. They are. You get a 20% discount off the bat.
Right. Yeah. And then on top of other discounts that like the dispensaries will give out. So yeah, totally like protect the medical program, not just for, like you said, like the financial stuff, but to take care of the patients. Especially with the way things are right now and like certain things, certain programs getting cut, it's gonna be pretty convenient for you to get something cannabis wise instead of trying to go for like opiates and stuff like that. Way cheaper, more natural.
It is. And I want to say for those of you there that run a dispensary, customers don't really like it when they're entitled to no tax and then you have a discount for regular customers and you tell them you can't get the discount because you don't stack discounts. That tax-free is actually not a discount. It is an entitlement to that patient that they don't get taxed. So it's not a stacking thing. It's just that tax isn't being put on there. And to be honest, you don't even have to pay that tax as a business owner. That you are free from paying that tax to the, you know, to the state and to, you know, the IRS and everything. So, you know, it's a benefit to you. So you stop making your life hell and, you know, just give these people the benefit. Like, you're not losing money. You're losing money when you were taxing them 20%.
Right. And then shame on you if you're not letting them have the discounts because they're medical. Like, why are you doing that?
And I've seen that, like, we don't stack discounts. I'm like, it's not a discount. Yeah. Like,
but I have heard certain places will like they'll be like, oh, you're getting a 20% medical tax discount, and it's like, if I'm a medical patient, I'm entitled to that tax, you know? Like,
it's not you being a nice person, it's you have to give me that discount. Like, it's literally a law.
Right.
Like,
what do you mean you can't give me an extra discount on top of that?
Yeah, you know, if you're, and like, it's not the fact that I want or expect a discount, but if you're giving it to everyone else, I should be able to get that too. It's just, I'm not paying the tax on it. Like, we're both winning in this situation. Like, I don't see the hang up on it. Like, to me, it made no sense. I was like, but that's a win-win situation for the business owner and the patient. Exactly. I don't pay taxes. You don't pay taxes. Like,
come on.
You know, because, and those of you out there too, make sure you watch your patients' numbers, because if you are not charging them taxes and they go over their limit, they're actually supposed to pay the taxes if they go over their limit. And a couple of people have ran into that and had to unfortunately shut down because they owed like tens of thousands of dollars in taxes, because every patient that was going through, regardless if they went over their units or not, they weren't charging them tax. And so it can work the other way too. So yeah, don't charge them the tax, but also be mindful of how much they're using. So don't go over that limit, because you will be on the hook for that extra tax.
Honestly, I know your limits. You know, like know what the limits are, know what legal limits are going to be for the medical stuff.
Yeah. And you get like 15 ounces or something ridiculous, you know,
I think it's 420 something units.
Yeah, it's close to a pound, you know, that you get. And so, yeah, it's quite a bit. So, yeah, just keep an eye on that. And we'll keep an eye on Canada and what's going on with there, because that's a predictor of what can happen here in the United States. Even though we don't have a national legalization thing, we have a national industry. You know, it's per state. You know, like every state has ran it their own way. But we do start seeing these trends kind of come to the States afterwards. I'm excited to see how that's definitely going to change things around here, especially with like medical programs and stuff like that. I do too. And this is good news to me in my book. This is actually good news. Yeah, sales went down, but medical sales went up. I'm like, well, that's fucking good in my opinion, you know? Because it'll give more hope for us to know that the medical program will come back and expand and stuff. Yeah, and I think we're starting to see that slowly here in New Mexico. So this just confirms it, you know. So that's good to hear. So that's all I have for this week's episode. Thank you so much again for joining me, Tabi. Thank you for inviting me. Of course, you know. Thank you for watching. Yeah, thank you all for watching. Of course, every week, you know, those of you that watch every week. But these are recorded, so you can watch them whenever. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe, whatever you got to do to stay in the know. So I'll be back next week, and I'll see y'all then. All right.